delay. Okay, so let's go over the agenda again real quickly. I know that you guys weren't able to see it. So here's our beautiful agenda. So again, we're going to go over the training part of it, the tracking overview, how you're able to track it. We're going to touch on the confidentiality and the best practices, what documents you need to kind of fulfill that part. And then we will talk about the civil rights training and the instructions on how to complete that. So next slide. Okay, so this visual will be a lot more helpful now that you all can see it, I'm sure. For who completes what? So for the confidentiality training, this training really needs to be completed by anyone who does any sort of direct services. So if they're helping with the application or if they're pre-screening people and getting that personal information, they really would need to complete this confidentiality training, as well as anyone that handles personal information. So that might be, maybe there is someone that is doing data entry on your team and they're not really doing direct services, but they're helping with the data portion. They still would need to complete confidentiality training because they're still handling that confidential information. Now the civil rights training, that one is a little bit more broad, and that one needs to be completed by anyone that is listed on your CFO contract. So in your budget, if there are names on that budget, then they really need to complete the civil rights training, as well as anyone that's doing any sort of CFO related work, whether it's direct services or whether it's background services, that does need to be completed by anyone that's doing that CFO work. Okay, next slide. Okay, so it is definitely easier to go to our website to kind of follow along with the documents that we'll be talking about. And so there's a little bit.ly link there at the bottom. I'm going to have Chi actually share this in the chat box with you as well, because Zach of our team was able to help me put all of these documents on our website yesterday so that they're really easily accessible and they're really laid out in an easy to use way. So if we could just pull that link up real quick, Chi, that would be awesome to just give a little bit of a visual. And so I just also want to plug our CFO subcontractor resources page. That is really going to be where you're finding a lot of, oops, it looks like there is an extra couple letters in there. So let me take those out. It should just be this one right here that I just shared. So if you click on that link that I just shared, you'll be able to see all of our subcontractor resources that we have on our website. And so you can also find this by going to the CSU Chico website and typing in CHC, and then you'll be able to navigate to the CalFresh outreach section. But really, this is a place where you can find all kinds of things that you might have questions about or might want that quick access to. So I highly suggest bookmarking this, not just for this part of the training, but for other resources as well. So let's see. If you are following along on the website, if you've clicked on that, what you can do is you can go down and you can click on the Confidentiality and Civil Rights Training Resources link. And that's going to really show you all the documents that you need to satisfy this requirement. Okay. Let's see. So you'll see that there are documents needed for tracking outlined there, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and you can click on those links to pull them up yourself, to kind of follow along. And then we also have specifically the confidentiality training and the civil rights training documents available as well. So feel free to follow along if you would like. Okay. So the first things that we're going to talk about are on the next slide. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And so this is the tools that you're using to track that these trainings actually happened. And so the first one is the Confidentiality and Civil Rights Tracker. And so this is just a really short and simple form. It's sort of like a sign-in sheet, and it really just it allows for you to capture people's names, which trainings they completed, the date that they completed them, as well as their signatures. And so this document is really for you to keep on your end. This is not something that you need to return to us. This is for you to keep as backup on your end for who has completed those trainings. And this proof of completion does need to be kept on file for 3 years after the contract ends. So we all know that this is a 3-year contract. It needs to be kept for 3 years after that contract ends, as well as many of the other documents that you're supposed to keep proof of for the contract. So that document is in there. That is just one that we developed to kind of give you somewhere to start. But if you come up with a different way to track this, or if you want to create your own sort of sign-in sheet that's a little bit more tailored to your organization or your campus, you can do that as well. This definitely gives you a place to start. The next thing I want to highlight is the training confirmation form. So this is actually a Microsoft form that you're just going to have your program director or your manager or your coordinator submit this. There only needs to be one submitted per organization or campus. And it's just really acknowledging that the trainings have been completed for your current team. It also highlights that you need to make sure any new team members are trained and that you need to keep the backup documentation for the length of time that we just talked about. So that form is due to us to be completed by April 15th, which is your Q2 reporting deadline. You may have gotten a calendar invite for that from Elisa yesterday. So that needs to be completed on April 15th and just sent our way. And that, again, that link is on that website that we were just talking about with all of those other steps. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we're going to dive into confidentiality. We have 2 documents to help support that training. We have a best practices document, and this is really good for developing systems that are specifically for your CFO program. There's also a CDSS Exhibit E confidentiality document. This one is a lot more dense and it's a lot more general, and so it still needs to be reviewed in full, but really we're going to highlight the best practices document just because it has information that can be directly applied to your program in a really simple terms. Okay, next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Elisa now to talk a little bit more about what that best practices document talks about.
Good morning, everyone. This is Elisa. So I will point out some important bullet points from our best practice document. Again, it's linked on the website. So the purpose of the confidentiality best practice document is to help simplify CDSS confidentiality requirements and to share how this can relate to an outreach program. Remember, participating in CalFresh is a personal matter that an individual may want to keep private, and it is our responsibility to respect their wishes. Personal information can be anything that identifies a person and can include such contact information such as a name, address, phone number, email, birth date, social security, etc. Also physical identifiers such as height, weight, hair, and eye color, tattoos, piercing. Anything that can identify a person can be a physical identifier. And geographic identifiers, residence location, class schedule, place of employment, etc. So when collecting someone's personal information, it is very important to have a secure way to store and transfer personal information. So for example, when we host an outreach event, we have a small portable box that locks, and that is where we collect the contact sheets until we transport them to the office. Also, do not hold onto someone's personal information for long periods of time. Have a locked cabinet or box to store any paperwork in. So in our office, we have a locked cabinet that we keep the contact sheets and any ROIs, release of information that we collect. When finished with using someone's personal information, the document should be deleted or destroyed by shredding. So we do not hold on to any of our applicants' verifications. We either give them back to the individual or we shred them. So we do not keep any verifications, any personal information that belongs to an applicant. We do not keep those. We shred those immediately or give it back to the applicant. Tips for protecting confidential data that has been collected. So always confirm the identity of anyone who is requesting personal data. So if someone is requesting data or asking questions, just confirm that it is them. Or don't share any information unless the person comes in or whatever makes sense. Never share the personal information of someone you have helped with anyone else other than that person. So if you have someone calling on their behalf, don't share that information. It has to be with the person that was helped. Never share personal or protected information about coworkers or other organizations as well. Tips for protecting confidential data that has been collected. So clear desks and workstations of sensitive information when you are out of the office or when others are in your office. So don't leave contact sheets and hanging around in your desk. Make sure that people are around your office or in your office, that all of that is being protected and covered. Promptly pick up print jobs, faxes, or photocopies. So in our office, we tend to be a lot busier, so we promptly try to get those from the copy machine. Or when we send a fax to make sure it went through, we collect those documents and give it back to the applicant, or we shred those. Arrange the computer screens, whiteboards, and documents so that they cannot be seen by unauthorized individuals. So please, if there's any way you can rearrange your office so this will take place, do so. Tips for protecting electronic information. So require a secure username and password when logging on to any system that contains confidential information. For example, we have logins for our CBO accounts. We log in to use our computers. So if your campus organization has a login system, please make sure to do that. And then use a password to protect master logs and other important data. If you need help setting a password on your master log, please reach out to your program manager. We do have procedures on how to do that, or we could offer some assistance. It's very important that we do keep the master logs secure because that contains a lot of our applicants' data. So it's important to keep that locked. And I will pass it right back to Brandy.
All right, thank you, Elisa. Okay, so diving into civil rights. So we're not really going to do this training together. Oops, excuse me. We're going to just kind of talk about what you need to do on your end. So again, going back to that website that we were looking at together, it has the link for this CDSS civil rights training. So it's approximately 30 minutes long. It's not too long, and it can be done as a team. And you can do it at a team meeting if you would like. Or you can do it individually as well, just whatever works for your team. Typically, we try to do it as a team, especially if we get new interns in. We try to do it at a team meeting, but of course, some people are not going to be available to do that, so then they can also do it individually on their end. The most important part is that you're really capturing their name and their signature and the fact that they completed this training on your tracking sheet. So if you do this as your own, you can enter your information as just that person. But if you do it as a team, please use your program director or your program manager or coordinator's name when it asks you to sign up. So you'll have to complete a registration and go ahead and use their name if you complete it as a group. But it is a little tricky how you complete it. So if you click on that link, you'll see that there's a spot for first name, last name, and I believe email. So in order to kind of track this from the state side, please input the first name as the first and last name, and then input the last name as your campus or organization when signing up. So that sounds a little confusing, but that's just the way that we're able to track it stateside when there's not that extra space to enter that campus or organization. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out, because I know that that is kind of worded a little funny. And then also, let's see, Chi, would you be able to just pull up that link real quick from our website so we can take a peek at that just to see what it looks like? Let's see. I do also believe that there is a certificate that they reference in the actual training. That's not a requirement to fill out a certificate for everyone that completes it, but if you're interested in the certificate, we have that as well if you want to give that to anyone that's completed the training, but it's not a requirement, so that's why we didn't include it here. But it is an option if you want them. They're kind of pretty. Okay, I think we're having a little trouble seeing screens, so we'll go ahead and just go to the next slide. But just remember that if you do have trouble with what we mean by this third bullet point, then just please reach out to your program manager and we can help you enter that information correctly. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, awesome. So the steps to complete, I know that that was kind of a roundabout way of kind of giving you all those resources. I'm hoping that having them laid out on the website makes it a little bit more clear. But here's also sort of a timeline of how to complete this and what you need to sort of fulfill. So number one is having your team complete the confidentiality and civil rights trainings with the materials available on our website. So go through the materials for the confidentiality, those 2 documents, and also have your team or have them individually go through that civil rights training on the CDSS website that we also have linked. So do both of those things. Then make sure to submit your confirmation form, also available on that link by April 15th. We definitely appreciate early submissions, but you have until April 15th to send those in. If you have any questions or issues with that date, please reach out to your program manager to address that. And then number 3, please keep proof on file and make sure your new team members are trained accordingly. So just make sure you're keeping track of that tracking sheet and you're making sure that that's filled out. You're making that part of your onboarding process for new people that join the project. Just making sure that they have that foundation of both of these topics. Okay, next slide. Okay, now is the time where you guys can ask us questions if you have any. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box, or you can also unmute yourself if that's easier. And we'll give you a minute or so to ask any questions if you have them. I also, again, just want to give a shameless plug to that, the subcontractor resources on our website. There's just so much good stuff in there to check out. So really utilize that link and kind of just poke around and see if there's anything else that maybe you didn't really know or were maybe looking for. It might be there. We're always adding to it also as questions come up.
Hi, Julie. I see that you asked a question. So do my student volunteers who help other students sign up for CalFresh need to do both? The answer is yes. They do need to do the confidentiality and the civil rights training.
Hi, Koji. I see your question. As a program manager, do members of our team use my login when doing the training on their own? No, they don't have to use your name specifically or your login. They can use their own name just as long as they're including your campus name in there, sort of in that configuration that I talked about, then that's totally fine. They don't necessarily need to use your name. And you're going to have backup of everyone that does this training anyway, so it's not super, it's just kind of confusing how the state tracks it. But as long as you have everyone who completed its name on your backup documentation, then you're good to go. Okay, awesome. So Chia is pulling up that subcontractor resources link that I've been talking about. So again, just a lot of good stuff in here. Here's all of the confidentiality and civil rights training resources. We are going to also add the slides for this, as well as the YouTube video of the recording of this so that you can go back and reference it, or if you have questions, you can definitely tap into those resources. But everything you need should be right here. Okay, it looks like we have a question from Rigo. Hi, Rigo. To confirm, it's okay to scan docs into our internal drives on our work computers and file them there, as long as we have password-protected access and shred the physical copies. Yes, that is totally fine. I know that there are a lot of documents that are, more confidential that you may need to save and scan in, and that is totally okay as long as you are making the moves to make sure they're password protected. And yeah, I definitely know that many organizations and campuses are going more digital than having paper copies. We definitely support that. So yeah, that's definitely okay. Okay, so another question from Julie, is the confidentiality training just going over the best practices doc? So if you look on the screen right here, this confidentiality training section it's going over these two documents. So there's the one that we created, which is the best practices one, and then there's the CDSS Exhibit E document. So in order to fulfill this part of the training and mark off that someone did it, they just need to review both of these documents. And so the CDSS one is a little bit more dense. The legal terminology that they use is a little bit more dense. The best practices one is really just applying it in more easy to understand language, and it really just applies it to an outreach program. So they do need to look at both of those documents in order to mark off that they completed confidentiality training. You guys have some great questions this morning. I'm so excited. All right. Okay, so yes, Julie, your team does need to review the 2 confidentiality documents and the civil rights video to be in compliance. And then after they review those 3 things, then you can track it, and then you can confirm that your team completed their full training. And then that will make them be in compliance. So yes, you're correct. All right, well, I guess we will go ahead and end the webinar. We'll stay on for a couple minutes. If you have any additional questions, we're happy to answer them. If more questions come up as you are doing the trainings, please reach out to your program manager. They'll be able to sort of guide you along that process. And again, if for some reason you're having trouble completing this by that deadline, please again reach out to your program manager, because they can help you sort of figure that piece out. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Again, the recording is going to be available on the same link that we shared with you, and the slides will be available as well. So thank you so much for joining us.